In the heart of Cebu City, where narrow alleys were lined with rusted tin roofs and the scent of the sea mixed with the smoke of street food, lived a thin, barefoot boy named Arvin. His world was small, a broken hut near the port, a guitar missing one string, and dreams too large for the place he was born into. Every morning, as the city stirred awake, he sat by the old stone wall outside the market and played songs for coins. The people passing by barely looked, but sometimes a kind stranger would stop, smile, and drop a few pesos into his open guitar case. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a piece of bread and a reason to keep singing. Arvin had learned music not from books or teachers but from the sounds around him, the ocean's rhythm, the humming of tricycles, the voices of tired fishermen returning home. His father had left when he was 5, and his mother worked long hours cleaning houses. When life grew too heavy, Arvin sang. His voice wasn't polished or trained, but it carried something deeper, truth. It had cracks that told stories, rough edges shaped by hunger, and a warmth that could melt the coldest hearts. One afternoon, while he sang Hotel California on the sidewalk, his eyes closed and heart wide open, a foreign tourist stopped to listen. The man stood silently for a long moment, holding his phone up as Arvin's voice filled the humid air. The guitar was slightly out of tune, the background noisy, yet the boy's emotion pierced through everything. When he finished, the stranger smiled and said softly, "You have something special, kid," before walking away. Arvin thought nothing of it. To him, it was just another day of survival. But a week later, his world changed. The tourist had uploaded the video to social media with the title, "Poor Boy from Cebu Sings Hotel California Like an Angel." The clip went viral overnight. Millions watched the little boy with the broken guitar pour his soul into every word. People shared it with captions like, "This voice deserves the world." Suddenly, international news outlets reached out, and the producers of Ireland's Got Talent sent an invitation. They wanted him to come and perform live on stage. Arvin couldn't believe it. The same voice that once echoed in the dirty streets of Cebu was now calling him toward a stage halfway across the world. For the first time in his life, hope felt real, not a dream, but a door that had finally opened. The flight to Ireland felt like stepping into another world for Arvin. He had never been on a plane before, never seen clouds so close that they looked like soft mountains of white. When he landed, the cold air hit his face like a reminder that this was real, he wasn't dreaming. The producers of Ireland's Got Talent greeted him kindly, though he could barely understand their accents. They gave him new clothes for the audition, but he chose to wear his old ones, the same faded shirt and scuffed pants he wore when singing on the streets of Cebu. "This is who I am," he whispered to himself, holding tightly to his little guitar, the one he refused to replace. As the lights of the studio flickered on and the cameras pointed toward the stage, Arvin's heart pounded. The crowd was huge, people from all over Ireland, judges seated before him, their faces curious but unsure. The announcer introduced him as a street singer from the Philippines. Some audience members clapped politely, others whispered among themselves. He could feel their doubt. A poor boy, barefoot under the shining stage lights, holding a weathered guitar, what could he possibly offer? When the music started, his fingers trembled on the strings. For a moment, he almost forgot how to breathe. But then, as the first chords of Hotel California filled the hall, he closed his eyes. He remembered Cebu, the waves crashing against the shore, his mother's tired smile, the smell of fried bananas from the corner stall. And suddenly, the fear melted away. His voice, raw and imperfect, rose through the theater. Each note carried a story, hunger, hope, and survival. The audience grew silent, their laughter fading into awe. His tone cracked in places, but it was those cracks that made it beautiful, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. When he reached the chorus, his voice soared higher, trembling with emotion. Judge Amanda pressed her hand over her heart, her eyes shimmering with tears. Judge Sean leaned forward, stunned, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. The camera zoomed in on Arvin's face, eyes closed, singing not for fame or money, but for the life that had brought him here. The crowd began to stand, slowly at first, then all at once. A standing ovation. Arvin opened his eyes just as the final note faded, the echo of his song hanging in the air like magic. For a moment, he didn't know if it was real, until he saw Amanda whisper, "That's not a song. That's a miracle." For a moment, the studio remained silent, heavy with emotion. Then, from the judge's table, Sean stood up, eyes glistening. Without saying a word, he reached forward and slammed the golden buzzer. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause as golden confetti burst from the ceiling, raining down over Arvin like a shower of sunlight. The boy froze, his small body trembling. For a second, he didn't move, he just stared upward, his hands shaking, his lips parting in disbelief. The lights reflected in his tears, and in that instant, it felt as though the whole world had stopped to witness something pure and divine. Amanda ran up to the stage, unable to hold back her emotions. She wrapped Arvin in a hug, whispering into his ear, "You reminded us what real music sounds like, not perfect, just honest." Arvin tried to speak but couldn't, his voice broke into quiet sobs. The audience cheered louder, chanting his name again and again, "Arvin! Arvin!" People in the crowd wiped their tears, touched not just by his performance but by the truth he carried in every note. He wasn't a pop star. He wasn't polished. But he was real, painfully, beautifully real. Backstage, the other contestants watched in silence. Even they couldn't deny the power they had just witnessed. One of them whispered, "That boy didn't sing to win, he sang to survive." The judges gathered again, still emotional, each of them expressing disbelief that such a voice had come from a boy who once sang barefoot on the streets. Sean turned to Amanda and said, "Sometimes, talent isn't taught. It's born out of struggle." Meanwhile, far away in Cebu, in a small wooden house by the sea, Arvin's mother sat watching the live broadcast on an old TV that a neighbor had lent her. When the golden confetti filled the screen, she covered her mouth, sobbing with joy. "That's my son," she whispered to no one in particular, her voice trembling. Around her, neighbors gathered, clapping and crying, celebrating as if it were their own child. Arvin stood on stage, surrounded by gold, his heart pounding. In that moment, he realized something profound: this wasn't just his victory. It was for every child who had ever sung under the open sky, for every mother who had ever prayed for a miracle, for every dream that had once seemed too far to reach. His raw voice had turned Hotel California into something far greater than a song. It had become magic, born from pain, lifted by hope, and carried by the power of belief.